You conquered Mount Everest. That's like, you dared it all. So, and it's my pleasure to introduce you, sir, and I'm going to begin at the very beginning. How is it? How do you feel coming to the Pink City of India?
Well, yeah, it feels great, and the best part is I can actually see the youth out here present and coming, and coming together and exchanging ideas, seeing different kind of cultures. So it's an amazing feeling to be between them, and yeah, it's always a pleasure to be within young minds.
Okay. Were you always so adventurous, or is it a newly acquired?
Yes, I was from the very beginning. As I told you, I've always been an outdoor person, and all I got my calling when I was pretty young. I was 10 years old and climbing in Maharashtra, a small hill. And when I saw the sun setting from the top of the small hill, that was my time when I said, I have to do more of this, and I took it on, and there was no looking back from that point in time.
Did someone actually tell you should climb the Everest, or?
Yes, I got a pretty good response from my mentor, first of all, Colonel Dillon, who's currently the principal of Indian Institute of Skiing and Mountaineering. He's a person who's actually nurtured me in a very different way. He's always let me live my dreams, and he's always, he's been as a second parent to me. And at the same point in time, my instructors, you always have this dream of climbing Everest, but I never had that confidence. So my confidence was nurtured at NIM, where I trained Nehru Institute of Mountaineering in Uttarkashi. And out there they spotted me as there was something different in my climbing, in me getting very easily acclimatized at higher oxygen levels, in lower oxygen levels, and no nausea feelings, and my body was basically built for it.
That's good. When did you decide that you have to climb? Like, there must have been a point of time where you would have said, okay, now I'm ready, now I can climb.
Yes, and I was ready, and that was when I was actually 14 years old. I had already, I'd done one of my courses, and after that I'd started to live this dream that I am going to climb Everest, and no, nothing can stop me from doing that. And at that time I told my parents about it. And first of all, my parents didn't like it. For the first time, they didn't take me seriously. They were like, yeah, why not? You want to go and climb Everest? Go outside, climb the Park Hill. But at the same amount of time, once they got to know I was pretty serious about it, they were in a state of shock for sure. They were like, why don't you go and climb some other mountain? Why do you want to climb Everest? But what I had to say was, crossing maybe Delhi Road is much more dangerous than climbing Mount Everest. So, but they always encouraged me, and that was the time when I actually decided that I have to do this.
When did they change their mind?
I think they changed their mind because they actually saw me training for it, and they actually saw my dedication for it. They actually saw the passion which I had for mountains from the very initial beginning. They never knew I was so serious about it, but they didn't know also that slowly I was getting addicted to my field of passion. So once they got to know that, and once they spoke to my instructors where I was training, they got a pretty good response, and then they were confident that at least I will be able to manage myself on the mountain, So that was the time when they said, okay, you can go and try, but the mountain's are always there, you have, if you come back in one piece, you can go back again.
When you went for a 12-member, you had a 12-member team, so...
We had an 8-member team.
8-member
team, and we had people from, as I told you, Canada, US, Finland, Mexico, Switzerland, Nepal, and India.
Were they fun to be with?
Absolutely. We had 3 Finland guys also in our other camps, and they were like, we used to call them the bad Finns. When we climb with, full power, full dedication, full passion. But once we are resting at base camps, it's party time, We used to call them the bad Finns. Always partying out, always bulging into others' camps, and never letting others train. They were very fit climbers, so it didn't matter to them that they trained or they didn't. So they never let the other guys train, and it was actually very fun, hanging out with them out there.
You spent 40 days acclimatizing, so there must have been some problems still that you must have faced.
Well, yeah, the biggest problem was sleeping on ice. You sleep on ice in the night, and then you wake up, your back is half feet down in the snow, and your whole body is at a totally different level, and then you wake up and then you have a big bad backache, and you're like, oh shit, I have to climb another mountain now. So that was one of the biggest challenges which I had to overcome, my backache every day. And apart from that, yes, 40 days, it was a long time, and that's why, our mountaineering community is is a very close-knit community. And you actually, tend to, it's like a small family which you are living out there. It's like a small village. Everybody knows everybody, and you help each other on the mountain. And apart from that, you have good times. We actually do movie nights out there on laptops, and so you get closer to everyone. You get to know each other very well. You exchange. Everybody's from different land. Everybody's from different places. So it's actually wonderful to spend time with them.
What kept you going? I mean, there must have been some point where you said, "This is it. I'm not going anymore. Let's just go back home."
Well, the thing which was always there in my mind were two things. One was the view which I saw when I was 10 years old from the small hill. And I always had that thing in mind, that if the view from there, from that small hill was so beautiful, what would it be from top of the world, What would the view be from the top? And the second thing was, before leaving, my father told me, there might be a time when you'll be totally finished, you'll be taking in the next step would be impossible. You will feel like to go back home. But that is the time when your body gives way and your mind takes over. So you have to be fit here, and only then you'll be able to reach the top. And I would like to say in any field of life, it's not only just physical fitness which you need. It's a lot about mental fitness also. So these were the things which always kept me going. And at the same point of time, obviously, the determination. I was training for about a year for Everest, and obviously training before that for professionally mountaineering. So that was something different. But dedicatedly for Everest, I think. I wasn't ready to give it away so easily.
Okay, good. What was the worst part that you faced?
Well, the worst part was actually, climbing up, and there were two, actually, I would say, there were two incidents what happened. Once between Camp 2 and Camp 3, as I told you, the steep phase which is out there. It's a 70 degrees steep phase made of full ice and rock. When you're climbing, you have to kick at least twice or thrice into the ice to get a good grip. And climbing at that altitude in lower oxygen levels, kicking twice is a big thing. It's a big task altogether by itself. So that was one time when in my first time in my life, when I said, let's just go back home. I want to quit this thing. It's not my cup of tea. But at that point of time, I said, no, this is not it. This is not how I want it to be. And I have this dream, and I'm going to achieve it. There's nothing going to be coming between me and my dream, and I don't think there's anything bigger than my dream. You have to reach the top no matter what, and I went on.
What was the best part?
The best part was actually, I would say, standing on top of the world, obviously, out there, the summit, I'm telling you, it might be maximum. Every summit is even lesser, every summit is maybe of this table size. So when you're standing on top of the world, you are looking all around you, a 360-degree panoramic view. You can actually see the Earth's horizon. It seems like you're standing in outer space. A big pool of clouds and a big forest of Himalayas all around you. An amazing view, I think, I was very lucky to have actually seen it. And obviously, when the sun is rising, when even the sun is rising below your feet, it's an amazing feeling which you get. So I think that was my best moment, standing on top of the world.
Is this a one-time thing, or are you going to be another Appa Sherpa and climb it again and again?
Well, if given a chance, yeah, I'd love to go up Everest, and I'd love to try new routes up Everest. And let's see how, if I stay alive, I'll definitely do that again.
Did you get parental support? You got parental support, but what about other people, NGOs, government, that sort of a thing?
Well, all of my whole community where I live, my sector, my whole local place was actually very supportive. Government, I would just say, they would support me if they get time from their scams. So, but apart from that, yeah, I was thoroughly thrilled with the idea of me going up Everest and actually achieving my dream. And at the same point of time, slowly, it wasn't just left my dream. It was lots of members, my friends started to live the dream with me. What I've achieved today is not just my dedication and my hard work. From the very initial bits of I used to miss school a lot, managing studies was very difficult. I was in 11th and my final exams were going on. At that point of time, just after my final exams, I left for Everest. So at that point of time, my school came into play. My friends were very supportive. They used to give me extra notes. My teachers used to take extra classes, and they used to take extra pains. So I think it's an effort of everybody, and slowly it wasn't just left my dream. Everybody started to live the dream with me.
That was actually one of my next questions, about your study. But I've heard that Mount Lhotse is a much tougher peak than Everest. So.
Absolutely, it's a much technically tougher peak than Everest. And Everest is rated so well nowadays. It is difficult. It has its own difficulties. It has its own challenges. But at the same point of time, Mount Lhotse is technically very difficult. Climbing over 8,000 meters, the difficult part starts over 8,000 meters on Lhotse. There's this big gully which you have to cross. It was supposed to be only 400 meters, but it seemed like it never ended. Climbing above 8,000 meters where your body is shutting down slowly, and you have to climb this gully which is almost 80 degrees in slope, and it is called a rockfall area. So when you're climbing, you have lots of rock coming over you from above at a steep slope. So that is one of the biggest challenges which I faced in my mountain.
Khumbu Icefall?
No, Khumbu Icefall is at a lower level. Those are like big crevasses. You see a lot of dead bodies out there, and one of the worst sights which I saw was I don't know, a person must have died in the Khumbu Icefall. He must have fallen into the crevasse, and slowly over the period of time, the ice shifted, crushed the whole dead body, and now actually I could see a thick meat piece, inside the ice, and it was a terrible feeling, seeing a human being squashed into a cutlet.
Okay, this is the last question, and then we'll move on to the audience. What other interests do you have apart from mountaineering?
Apart from mountaineering, I'm a big-time soccer fan. If I wouldn't have been a mountaineer, I would have been playing football. Not at a really big level, but I always wanted to be a football star. And that is one of my biggest passions. Apart from that, I'm a national level taekwondo and a karate player. I play basketball, I play volleyball, I play tennis. So I'm into all sports.
Thank you.